They can start whenever they're ready. I believe some of the other matches are just kicking off in the background. Speaking of in the background, it sounds like someone is doing a little cleanup here at the convention center. All right, Reid Duke going to kick things off. On the play, plays a land, passes back. Chris Andersen here. His hand appears to include Dryad Arbor, Elvish, Visionary, Wirewood Symbiote, Verdant Catacomb, Nettle Sentinel, Kyrian Ranger, and a mystery card I didn't quite get to. Verdant Catacombs is the play. He's going to immediately crack it to find a land. Dryad Arbor, very typical choice here. Chris couldn't find his pen there.
So this Elves deck is a deck that's really a combo deck. It seeks to get some combination of Heritage Druid and Nettle Sentinels out. And the Heritage Druid can tap 3 untapped Elves to make green, green, green. And the Nettle Sentinel helps because it untaps whenever a green creature enters the battlefield.
So he goes ahead and gets just a regular forest, basic forest. In fact, I believe it may be, is it whenever it enters the battlefield or whenever a green creature is cast?
Oh, well, let's double check on that.
We'll get the Oracle text on that. There, he's going to cast that Nettle Sentinel. And immediately Swords to Plowshares from Reid Duke. Does not want things to get out of hand, which is something that Elves is certainly capable of. Reid's going to go ahead and, on his second turn, play a Wasteland into a Stoneforge Mystic. Immediately tutor up an Umezawa's Jitte. A very, very potent weapon against these Elves decks. Being able to take out multiple Elves every time it connects.
All right, Joe, you got me. You had it right. I apologize for that mistake. Whenever you cast a green spell, you may untap Nettle Sentinel. So that's
even better.
Even better, yeah. Better than I said. And there, you see some of Chris Andersen's cards are signed. He's been doing this. He's going around to all of his friends on the Open Series, getting them to sign his cards as kind of a going-away remembrance. So he can take that deck with him.
Apparently this is the only deck he's going to keep.
Yeah.
So he plays a Bayou, a Wirewood Symbiote, and a Kyrian Ranger and passes back to Reid.
Okay, so this is the other thing the Elves deck can do. The Wirewood Symbiote can return an Elf to your hand, and the Kyrian Ranger can return a Forest to your hand, both to untap a creature.
Green Sun Zenith from Reid, X equals 1 there, and we've got a Noble Hierarch on the board from Reid Duke.
So those creatures combined can also, help make some mana here. You can untap mana creatures. The return an Elf ability, very useful with Elvish Visionary, which is a cantrip creature. You can keep drawing cards off of it.
Also helps protect an Elf that may be targeted, or even from a mass removal spell, you can return it.
Most certainly. And in this matchup, the most important thing that Bounce an Elf ability does is it blanks the equipment. Batterskull, Umezawa's Jitte, you block and then return the Elf to your hand. No lifelink, no counters on a Jitte.
Elvish Visionary comes down here.
Here we go. So
for Chris Andersen.
He's got an engine. Now, Glimpse of Nature is kind of the explosive combo card for this deck, but you can also build incremental advantage with that Elvish Visionary, playing it every turn.
Verdant Catacombs comes down immediately. Chris cracks it to find a Bayou, one of the few unsigned cards, it appears.
Well, he's already had another Bayou signed, so he is not concerned about card value. This is really for sentimental value.
That's awesome.
And
Deathrite Shaman is the play from Chris Andersen.
And when Deathrite Shaman was printed, Cedric Phillips for a couple of opens was basically saying, why not? It's a 1/2, why not? Extra point of toughness or extra power. It's also an Elf. Because why not?
Yeah, because why not? Exactly. All right, looks like Reid is going to go ahead and brainstorm off of the blue mana from that Noble Hierarch. Reid's list is it's a Bant list. It's kind of got an aggressive bent to it to some degree. He's got the Noble Hierarchs providing both explosiveness as far as mana goes and a bit of an extra power boost. He's got the Stoneforge Mystic, as you can see, tutoring up equipment. But at the same time, he's got some library manipulation in the form of Brainstorm. He's got counter spells like Force of Will. So he's kind of a aggro controlish deck. He's got Knight of the Reliquary. That's one of the big ones. He's got a one of Scavenging Ooze, a one of Kasali Pride Mage for trouble spots. He's got an additional, or he's got a Gaddock Teague over there in the main deck that he can tutor up with the Green Sun Zenith as well. And there you see a Gaddock Teague he's got on the table.
Yeah, the Force of Wills in Reid Duke's deck, 4 of them are in the sideboard. Main deck, he has 3 copies of Daze, his potential counter magic. But they quickly lose effectiveness against an elf force that can make mana from all different corners. So the Gaddock Teague, the main thing it's going to do in this matchup is it is going to shut down Green Sun Zenith.
Not only Green Sun Zenith, but Natural Order.
Yeah, that is true. Chris Andersen playing 3 copies of Natural Order. Reid Duke, no copies of Natural Order. That is often a configuration you see, commonly called no bant, N-O for Natural Order.
All right, Chris has a spell, or at least he's adding some mana to his pool here. He's going to go ahead and cast...
Ezuri.
Yeah, Ezuri,
Renegade Leader.
Ezuri is one of the Elf Lords. Recently printed, actually, in Scars of Mirrodin.
Yeah, this legendary creature has got a mini overrun ability.
And he can regenerate other elves.
Yeah.
Can't regenerate himself. He can regenerate another target elf.
There you go.
There he is.
Regenerate another target elf, and then green, 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 2 only elf creatures, which is all of them for Chris right now.
With the exception of Wirewood Symbiote.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Elf creatures get +3/+3 and trample. So Symbiote and Dryad Arbor would really usually be the only non-elves. Maybe a Regal Force.
Right.
Craterhoof Behemoth. But if you have a Craterhoof, he has its own overrun.
Yeah.
So Ezuri in combination, if Chris can find a Gaia's Cradle, could really let him break through here.
Yeah, Overrun, a very, very potent ability. And Chris being able to activate it repeatedly.
So what you saw happen
Pretty
there
dangerous.
was Chris Andersen tapped his Deathrite Shaman, most likely for mana. I think his lands are now exiled, turned sideways. Yeah, and he untapped it with the Wirewood Symbiote, returning Elvish Visionary to his hand, and recast the Elvish Visionary to draw a card.
Now he's going to go ahead and crack his fetch land here. Finds another dual land.
Yeah,
It's a Savannah.
He's going to
one
want
of
to find
Savannah
a
there.
Cradle. And
He's going to go ahead and use that Savannah and the Deathrite Shaman
another
to
Elvish
recast
Visionary.
or to cast another Elvish Visionary here, and he's going to draw. Finds a Gaia's Cradle. So Gaia's Cradle's huge. Chris says go.
Yeah,
He knows next turn he's going to have something very explosive. Gaia's Cradle not able to be countered, so Reid can't really do anything about it. He doesn't have access to something like Stifle. He can't stifle Ezuri's ability. So that's looming for Chris Andersen next turn. Reid Duke likely unaware of it, but should be pretty well aware of the potential for an Ezuri blowout.
Yeah, he's gonna, if he's got a Swords to Plowshares on the Ezuri, he might be able to hold things off, but not with that Wirewood Symbiote. So he's gonna need to catch Chris in a situation where he tries to use the Wirewood Symbiote to bounce the Elvish Visionary to gain value. Wirewood Symbiote and Quirion Rangers, notably, you can only activate them once per turn.
Right, so if he uses the Wirewood Symbiote, then Ezuri will be shields down, so to speak.
Yeah, a different kind of shield, really.
Yeah.
You might be used to seeing something like Mother of Runes, which you want to see tapped. Usually, you know, a once-a-turn type effect. These are actually better. You can use it once on your turn and once on your opponent's turn.
That's right. So a Brainstorm from Reid Duke finishes resolving. He immediately cracks a Windswept Heath, going to refresh the top of his library, get a couple of different cards up there, shuffle away whatever he put back. Finds a Tundra here.
This is going to be a tough game 1 for Reid Duke. I feel like Swords to Plowshares, finding one of those, a second copy of those, is really going to be his only shot now with this Ezuri able to overrun. So shuffles.
So we
the
keep
fetch
mentioning
land.
it. Wirewood Symbiote being a non-elf. If you don't know Legacy, you're looking and going, this is an elves deck. Why are you playing a 1/1 that's not an elf? There you
It's an
see it on the screen.
insect.
It is an insect, that's right, and it returns an elf to your hand. So is that really that good? You can see all the work it's doing. It's going to protect Izuri from a Swords to Plowshares. It's also going to protect all of
Okay.
Chris's elves from Umezawa's Jite,
Here we
as you
go.
mentioned.
Chris Andersen plays Gaia's Cradle. Call him Mr. Fahrenheit. He's about to explode. And now he's just trying to figure out how much mana he can make. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 creatures. So that's 6 green mana potentially off of Gaia's Cradle. So is this entering combat?
Looks like it's just
Yeah.
the elves. He's going to leave back that symbiote so that it doesn't
So
end up dying in combat here. The elves creatures are the only ones getting the bonus. But yeah, it looks like 6 creatures, and he will be able to actually untap that cradle. So that's 12. I'm seeing
untap Cradle with...
the symbiote.
No, the symbiote is untap target elf.
Oh, I thought it was, I'm sorry.
Or
I thought
creature.
okay, mixing that up with one of the other creatures. Kyrian Ranger, I think, does can return a forest you control
To untap
to
creature.
untap target creature.
Yeah. So Reid Duke going to block, and Chris Andersen should have enough mana here to be able to overrun twice for +6/+6 and trample. So 6 mana, does it once, floating a green. So now all the elves +3/+3.
Yeah, true overrun for the elves.
Is he going to stop there, or is he going to go for a little bit more? So he's floating 1 green from the cradle. He has 3 more lands, and then he can use... He can also... Okay, so he's placed a regeneration shield with the floating green mana on Deathrite Shaman, which is which one? At the top.
Yeah. All right, Reed's going to go ahead and use the Stoneforge Mystic to vial in an uncounterable Umezawa's Jite, and
So a lot of quick stuff happening there.
yeah,
And
it was almost Reed at 2, and I think that may have been
So-
untap Deathrite Shaman kill you.
yeah,
I think that's what it was.
I believe that's what happened. Yeah, it looks like he went to 2 life after the attack, and then all he had to do is untap Deathrite Shaman and activate
Right.
using the Drain ability.
And he was able to untap Deathrite Shaman using using either the Wirewood Symbiote
I think
or
he
the
returned. I think
Kyrian
he
Ranger.
returned the land. So yeah.
So
Kyrian
yeah,
Ranger.
either one. He had multiple options.
Okay.
And confirmed, Deathrite Shaman is the creature that did the killing there in Game 1. So Chris Andersen takes Game 1 from Reid Duke here in the quarterfinals of the StarCityGames.com Legacy Open. Live from Indianapolis, I'm Joey Pasco. That's Ricky Hayashi. Going to give you guys a chance to win 3 months of SCG Premium. And the way that's going to happen, we're going to ask you guys a question, a trivia question. You tweet your answer using Twitter with the hashtag SCG Premium, which you can see down there in the
Tweet your
middle.
answer.
All you need to do is have the correct answer and SCG Premium in your tweet, and you're in the running. We will select one random correct answer as our winner, and in this particular instance, you'll win 3 months of SCG Premium. We're going to be doing the same thing again in the semifinals, where we will give away 6 months of Premium, and then a whole year in the finals. So that's the way it works.
All right.
We're going to ask you some trivia. So how about this one? Do you like this one? Right here?
I do like that one.
Why don't you go with that?
Okay, so yesterday we had the Standard Open here. We're playing the
We did.
Legacy Open today. The semifinals and quarterfinals, the top 4 of the Standard Open, wrapped up this morning. We were there. We
Yes,
saw
we
the
were.
finals together.
Yeah.
An Esper Control Mirror, Joey. It's a fantastic finals.
It was.
Go home and watch it if you haven't seen it, or go and watch the replay.
I'm
I
going to
mean,
go home
later
and watch
on.
it. It was very good.
So that Standard Open, the trivia question is, tell us who won the Standard Open with
Yeah.
Esper Control. If you know the answer to that, please tweet at hashtag SCG Premium, and you may win 3 months.
That's right. Sounds good.
All right.
Pretty easy.
And now we will go to the sideboards here.
Yes. Let's look at the sideboards.
I felt that Reid Duke was a bit of an underdog in game one because he didn't really have ways to interact with the creatures, just the 4 swords to plowshares, and he needed to get his equipment online, but those were quickly blanked.
Sounds like news from one of the other tables. Ben Weinberg up a game against Chris Van Meter. So the Elves so far have won 2 games here in this top 8 in the hands of 2 different players.
Yeah, so Ben Weinberg defeating Chris Van Meter, and unlike the Invitational top 8, these are once again best of 3,
That's right.
not best of 5. So up a game means he is in position. One more game and Ben Weinberg moves on to the semifinals. Now, Reid Duke has lost a game here. He's down, needs to interact with those elves in some way. How is he going to do that, Joey Pasco? What do we have here? Is there anything? I mean, he's Bant, not really a colors known for their removal spells.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused. This is Reid Duke's list we have in front of us, but I'm looking at his sideboard and I see a Batterskull, and I'm looking for a Batterskull listed here in the sideboard, and it's not. So, excuse me, I'm not quite sure about the accuracy of that information. But
So
we will
let
figure
me
it out.
let us read off what we have here for the
Yeah.
deck list to you guys at home. The sideboard listed here is 4 Force of Will, 2 Relic of Progenitus, 2 Meddling Mage, 1 Sword of Fire and Ice, 1 Life from the Loam, 1 Humility, 1 Envelop, 1 Blue Elemental Blast, 1 Counterspell, and 1 Vendilion Click. So what stands out to you there? There's one card that stands out to me almost immediately.
Is that, well, 2 cards jumped out at me, but
Okay.
the first one that jumped out at me was Humility.
Yeah,
because
that's the one.
Yeah, it's like it's going to make a lot of these 1/1s into 1/1s, but
But it,
it
removes the abilities.
The important thing is removing the abilities, and so yeah, while Chris will have tons of creatures just like he usually does, they're only going to be 1/1s. They're not going to be. I'm sorry, they're still going to be 1/1s, but they're not going to have their relevant abilities. So it's just going to be these blank guys, and I think, being able to kind of neuter the creatures on Chris's side is going to be a huge way for Reid to be able to win this game. There's only 1 copy of Humility there.
And it costs 4 mana, so
Right.
it's kind of like, is that even good enough? So let me try to guess at the other card that you were thinking about. Is it Meddling Mage?
It was not Meddling Mage.
Oh. All right.
And this one I'm less sure of. It was Sword of Fire and Ice, but just being able to potentially connect
Okay,
and
yeah,
do
sure.
maybe kill something, I thought might be something he might be interested in. His sideboard doesn't appear to be very. It's not geared towards elves. He's got 4 copies of Force of Will to counter something for free, but if a Gaddock Teague is on the table, he's not going to be able to do that.
So, yeah, Sword of Fire and Ice may be better in a vacuum than Batterskull, because if you do connect, dealing the damage is better than just gaining life, perhaps. But the problem is you're never going to connect. It's protection from blue and red, not protection from
Right.
green. If it were Sword of Feast and Famine, that might be better. And also, the other problem is, in terms of not connecting, we talked about the Wirewood Symbiote ability to bounce
Right.
an elf. So that's a real problem if you are trying to do something with equipment.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and I thought maybe he had some evasive creatures that he could use, but I'm looking at the list and there is nothing there with any sort of evasion to take advantage of. So not necessarily a great idea. Like you said, kind of ran down the sideboards. Force of Will seems reasonable. It's not awful, I guess. It's just it's not great. Like he's able to counter those Green Sun Zeniths or the Glimpse of Nature, and that might be what it takes. This is a combo deck. It has a combo element, a combo kill. He needs to be able to counter Natural Order for Craterhoof Behemoth, so Force of Will may be the best way of answering that.
Maybe, but this is a combo deck. We saw Chris Andersen win without a combo, really, just
Absolutely.
mana creatures, a lot of mana from Gaia's Cradle and an Azuri. That is probably just a singleton in his deck, but a good one. I mentioned the Meddling Mage because you want to try to interact with the Elves deck as early as possible, and the Meddling Mage is a 2-drop. You might be able to disrupt the Elvish plan, and Reid Duke, having won the Legacy Open in Philadelphia just a few months ago, might know the best card to name
That's
based
true.
on the current board position.
Yeah, very unlikely that Chris Andersen is able to answer a Meddling Mage or remove it, that is. So Meddling Mage may be a very good card here, and we'll see if Reid brought it in.
So
But we're
from
underway. It looks like
from the
Reid.
other match, we have a quick update, Joey. Chris Van Meter with the Sneak and Show deck was able to even it up 1 game apiece. So that happened, just minutes after Ben Weinberg won a game because,
Yeah,
hey,
very
Sneak and
quickly.
Show.
Yeah. So we're underway here. I think Reid mulliganed to 6.
Okay.
That is confirmed, and he led off with a Misty Rainforest into a Tropical Island into a Noble Hierarch. Chris's turn here. He goes Misty Rainforest into Basic Forest into Findhorn Elves.
This is a question I often ask people. Will Elves play Elvish Mystic? Because it plays Llanowar Elves, it plays Findhorn Elves. Why not Elvish Mystic? And the answer I keep getting is no, under no circumstances.
Is that just based on, stubbornness? Is
Yeah,
that what it
being
is?
old-fashioned. But
Old-fashioned? Got it.
Chris Andersen here, yes, he's got 1 Llanowar Elf, 1 Findhorn Elf, 1 Elvish Mystic.
I
so
like
he
it.
says mixing it up is the best in case of any kind of random name a card effects.
Right. So turn 2, Reid Duke has the Stoneforge Mystic.
All right, Stoneforge Mystic on the board. Now Chris Andersen's going to follow up. He has access to 2 mana and looking to play another land. The equipment fetched up was Umezawa's Jite,
That's correct.
which is a great piece of equipment in a vacuum and decent on this board. And again, we'll have to see if Chris Andersen can find himself a Wirewood Symbiote to blank the equipment.
Yeah, that was the key card last game. Green Sun Zenith. Yeah, Green Sun Zenith to find a Wirewood Symbiote here is certainly a possibility. There he goes with that. Yeah, and it's exactly what he does.
Now Reid perhaps needs to have Swords to Plowshares on the Symbiote. It is an insect and not an elf. It cannot bounce itself.
That's right. So Reid is going to want to answer that as soon as possible so that he is able to even answer the other elves. It is kind of a Mother of Runes-esque effect. Being able to protect one guy for the turn. It has to be an elf, and it has to be recast, of course, but that is not the that is not as much of a liability in an elves deck that runs so many 1-drops. And that quickly, we've got an update from another match. Ben Friedman not only up a game, he wins 2 games to 0. And that one,
Oh.
Ben Friedman,
Wait.
Blue, White,
Oh,
Red,
sorry.
Delver versus Sneak and Show.
Okay, on my bracket I've got Ben versus Chris and Chris versus Ben.
Yeah, there's 2 Chris versus Ben matches and a Chris versus Reid match happening right here in front of us.
So that was Ben Friedman, the Blue, White, Red Delver deck, defeating Chris Burgesson, the Sneak and Show deck. Okay.
So it looks like Reid is currently in the tank at the moment, trying to determine how best to answer the elves on the other, well, the elf on the other side of the board and the insect. He's going to go ahead. Well, it looks like he was going to do something with the Stoneforge Mystic. Decides to wait a second. He's going to play a Wasteland first. He's going to go ahead and tap Tropical Island. So he's got some sort of play here. Tropical Island will cast a Green Sun Zenith for 0.
Can only be Dryad Arbor.
It can only be Dryad Arbor, and that is indeed what it is.
Or a Savage Bluff.
Fail to find.
Fail to find. FTF. Well, I mean, an important consideration, not in this matchup, but in Legacy, is the interaction with Grafdigger's Cage. You actually cannot fetch up a Dryad Arbor, either with Green Sun Zenith or a fetch land, because it's a creature coming out of your library.
Very interesting. I know that has come up in the past when Grafdigger's Cage was seeing a little more play. We don't see it as often now. Sometimes shows up.
Okay, so...
And Swords to Plowshares on the Symbiote. So that is the answer that Reid was looking for. Deals with the Symbiote, which is going to keep Chris from being able to protect his elves until he can find another Symbiote.
And that is really a key to this matchup for Reid Duke, is Swords to Plowshares. What did he use it on in game number 1? Don't even recall right now, but using it on the Wirewood Symbiote because that can blank all of Reid's equipment. And his equipment can actually deal with all of the other creatures. The Umezawa's Jite can just wipe out all of these elves if it can connect.
That's right. So I'm guessing Reid's looking to drop that into play, maybe at the end of Chris's turn here, depending on what happens, and we may see just how devastating Umezawa's Jite can be. Just a quick note from that Ben Friedman match. Apparently, Ben Friedman has not lost a match of Legacy all weekend long.
All weekend long. Actually, yeah, I recall that he
That
was one of
includes
the
the Invitational.
undefeateds
Yeah, that includes the
in the
Invitational.
Invitational and the Legacy portion.
So far, so good. Ben Friedman on a roll.
Well, that is a man who knows Legacy and knows this deck very well. So he has moved on. It's actually, oh, we do not know the other side of the bracket yet. Ben Friedman moving on to the semifinals in that half of the bracket. On this half of the bracket, Chris Andersen up a game against Reid Duke.
And so Chris Andersen able to kind of to assemble another little kind of mini combo there. Heritage Druid and Nettle Sentinel. He gets to tap 3 elves to add 3 green mana, and he's going to go ahead and do that.
Okay, so now the other half of the bracket is set. Chris Van Meter with Sneak and Show defeating Ben Weinberg moves on to the semifinals.
So it'll be Ben versus Chris again?
It will be Ben versus Chris again. So Chris Van Meter winning that, Chris versus Ben, Ben Weinberg or Ben Friedman winning his Chris versus Ben.
All right, so what happened there? Chris is able to tap 3 untapped elves to add 3 green mana. He uses that for a Green Sun Zenith, which, when cast, should be able to untap the Nettle Sentinel. Chris apparently missed it, and I think once he put the Symbiote into play, which is what he searched for with the Green Sun Zenith, he realized it and kind of like shrugged and went, "Yeah, well, guess I missed the trigger. Oops." And
yeah, and that may come back to bite him here. It looks like he's going to try to keep making some more mana. He returns the Heritage Druid to his hand with the Wirewood Symbiote's ability and untaps the Findhorn Elf. And he's also going to fetch a Bayou with his Verdant Catacombs. So he's going to be able to replay the Heritage Druid with the Bayou, and that will untap the Nettle Sentinel once again.
And there he can tap those 3 creatures again.
And he has another Green Sun Zenith.
To cast a Green Sun Zenith. X equals 2 there, and it's going to untap the Nettle Sentinel. And Elvish Visionary is the choice there, the tutor target for the Green Sun Zenith. So Chris is going to get to draw a card.
Okay. Well, I said he would tap the Bayou for mana. He has green mana floating from the previous Heritage Druid activation.
And he looks like he's unable to find a 3rd elf to tap there to continue the combo. So he passes the turn to Reid, and at the end of Chris's turn, Stoneforge Mystic puts an Umezawa's Jite into play.
But Chris Andersen, Green Sun Zenith for Wirewood Symbiote. The equipment is blanked. Did Reid Duke find another Swords to Plowshares?
Let's see what he found.
Oh, yeah.
Humility.
Wow.
Humility from Reid Duke, and this is the card that we talked about in the sideboard. It's a 1-of. It's going to make it so that all of Chris's creatures are just 1/1s. They have 0 abilities. Reid asking, how does that work with Dryad Arbor? Is it just still a 1/1? It's a creature. It loses all abilities and is a 1/1. So does it not tap for mana?
Oh my goodness, these questions. It shouldn't tap for mana, right? It loses all abilities. It is a 1/1. Yeah, it doesn't tap for mana. It's just like a Llanowar elf that is also a land. Okay.
So the 1/1 Stoneforge Mystic is going to pick up the Umezawa's Jite and attack. Chris is going to trade off his Elvish Visionary for the Stoneforge Mystic, but that puts 2 counters on the Jite.
So now we have to ask if Chris Andersen has an answer to Humility anywhere in his deck. I'm going to take a quick look at his deck list.
Reid is going to take the opportunity to destroy the Wirewood Symbiote with giving it -1/-1 with the Jite, one of the Jite counters there. He's going to save the other counter until he may need it in the future. But remember, these creatures, they don't have any of those abilities. They're just 1/1. So Chris is going to go ahead and attack with his 1/1s. He's got an Uzuri and an Elvish Visionary in hand, but again, just 1/1s. So he's going to cast the Elvish Visionary. It's a 1/1, but it does not draw him a card. He's going to go ahead and Green Sun Zenith.
Okay, so in the
This is a Green Sun
75,
for 0, so he's going to find a Dryad Arbor.
in the 75, the only thing I see, well, actually, I did not see anything. I'm sorry, is what I meant. There's Viridian Shaman in the sideboard, but that only hits artifacts,
Right,
not
so he can hit the Jite if he. But is that going to work? Does that come into play and still have that ability?
No, I was looking for anything for humility. He's
Right, but so either way, a creature with a comes into play ability doesn't have the comes into play ability.
would
so
not trigger.
It wouldn't, even if it killed enchantments, it couldn't hit the humility.
Nope.
Um,
Yeah, he's got 2 copies of Abrupt Decay, but the converted mana cost of humility is 4. Cannot be hit by Abrupt Decay. So this is a singleton in Reid Duke's deck that is an absolute killer, it seems. The only way Chris could win from this type of position is just to overwhelm Reid with creatures.
yeah, it looks like he's just going to have to swarm. So on Reid's turn, he's going to equip up the Dryad Arbor with the Umezawa's Jite. As you can see it there, it's a 2 casting cost equipment. It's a legendary equipment. There you see Chris blocks, and I think Reid responds by giving the blocker -1/-1. Either way, he got a couple of counters and took a couple of creatures out. He actually used 2 wastelands there on 2 of Chris's creatures. I'm sorry, lands. And Chris scoops them up here, and Reid Duke evens it up. A game apiece here with Bant versus Elves here in the quarterfinals of the StarCityGames.com Legacy Open, live from Indianapolis. I'm Joey Pasco in the booth with Ricky Hayashi, and these players are going to go quickly back to sideboards. They do have each other's deck lists, so they're going to have those for reference in case there's any question as to what exactly they may have. Of course, Reid, knowing that, hey, look, no answer to humility. If I can find humility, I think I can just win, as long as I don't get overwhelmed by 1/1s. But Umezawa's Jite can kind of helped quite a bit with that in Game 2.
And hey, look at this on Twitter. If you want to join the conversation on Twitter, you can tweet #SCGINVI. Luis Scott Vargas, newly inaugurated Hall of Famer Luis Scott Vargas. He is at LSV, says, well, at Reid Duke is known for his humility. He absolutely is known for his humility. Reid is one of the most humble pros Magic players around. So thank you for that comment, LSV. LSV, a noted wordsmith and punster. So humility is only a singleton, though, Joey. So I mean, Chris Andersen has a deck list. He knows that. I think he's just gonna have to say, if you draw it, you draw it. Can't really do anything about it. I mean, the best he can try to bring in these 3 Thought Seizes, 3 Cabal Therapies, and go for a discard plan. But again, it's a singleton. When do you hit him? When do you try to hit him with the discard to catch the humility?
Yeah, exactly. He's just gonna have to time it well. Maybe hit him early before the humility can come down. But then otherwise, he's just gonna have to.
But if it's not in his hand at a point where you try to go discard for it, then he's just gonna draw it and cast it later.
So we've got we've come back to the booth. As you can see, I'm Joey Pasco. That's Ricky Hayashi. Come back to the booth to do something a little fun while we're waiting for the players to get all set. This weekend.
Well, I don't like fun.
You don't like fun? Well, I'm sorry, Ricky.
What are we doing?
What we're doing is this weekend, as you may well already know, we had the Mythic Madness promotion going on, where a lot of our competitors, our Legacy Open, our Standard Open, they got an envelope that had 1 Mythic card in it.
I see where this is going.
Do you see where this is going?
Give me one.
Ricky says, come on, let's get to it. Yeah, this is previously known as Gold Rush. We're only going to open one of these here.
You're gonna open one. I'm gonna open one.
No, I think we're going to save it for the. We're going to save some for the semis and some for the finals.
Oh, we are opening one together.
Yeah, so let's open one together. Here, you want to open it, Ricky? You look so excited.
And okay, here we go. And the Oscar goes to
What did we get? It's a Star City Games sleeve.
the StarCityGames.com Open
The
Series.
card is backwards. Do you want to hold it?
Oh my goodness, this is.
Defiler of Souls.
Wow, you have been defiled.
Mythic rare from Shards of Alara, I believe.
Alara
Or is it
Reborn.
Alara Reborn?
This
Okay.
is a black red 3 creature demon flying at the beginning of each player's upkeep. That player sacrifices a monocolored creature. 5/5 flyer. Defiler of Souls. This is going to be my new nickname for you, Joey.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
We're going to open some more Mythic Madness envelopes in the semis and in the finals. So
I can't
That'll be
wait. By
exciting.
which I mean I literally can't wait. So
Yeah.
you better keep them on your side.
All right, I'll do that.
And we'll go back to
Let's
the
go back
match
to the
now,
match.
guys. Thank you for indulging me my dream to host
So
the
exciting.
Oscars.
There you
I
go.
always wanted to be like Neil Patrick
I
Harris.
didn't even know Defiler of Souls was nominated. All right, Chris Andersen going to kick things off here in Game 3 of our quarterfinal matchup. Chris Andersen versus Reid Duke. Chris Andersen with Elves. It is a deck he is more than familiar with. He is quite the capable pilot. He leads things off with a Dryad Arbor. Chris Andersen, playing in what could be his final Magic tournament, has made the decision to go back to school. He's going to take a possibly permanent hiatus from the game. At least that's the plan right now. You know they always come back. That's kind of the way it goes. But for the foreseeable future, I believe Chris Andersen has decided to leave the game, and so this is his final tournament. He's trying to go out with a bang. He's made the top 8. He's here against Reid Duke in the quarters, and they're all tied up. Swords to Plowshares from Reid Duke is going to take out the Dryad Arbor early and try to keep Chris off of that explosiveness that the Elves deck is so capable of.
A bit surprising there, I think, to see the Swords to Plowshares on the Dryad Arbor. We know how critical Wirewood Symbiote is to Chris's plan, not just in general, but also for blanking Reid's equipment. So that could be an indication that Reid has multiple copies of Swords to Plowshares, or maybe he has already found that humility again. Because there you go, Wirewood Symbiote.
Yeah, my guess is that he would have multiple copies, but yeah, he could have found the humility. It could be both. Reid keeping his hand tilted so we're not able to see it very well. But Reid is kind of in the tank here, so it's clear that he doesn't have this already planned out. So he's got to think about what he wants to do for the turn. Maybe the card he drew this turn is affecting his decisions, but he seemed to quickly decide on destroying that Dryad Arbor, or exiling it, I'm sorry. With
That
the Swords
is
to
not the
Plowshares.
face of a man who has another Swords to Plowshares.
I'll have to agree with you on that.
Or perhaps not the speed with which he'd cast his next spell. If I would just immediately cast that.
It's possible he's missing a land drop here. I'm not sure. He goes ahead and casts a Noble Hierarch, and he does have his second land drop. It's an island, so he's got access to 3 mana here.
And now Chris Andersen untaps Forest Wirewood Symbiote. I guess another thing with the Swords to Plowshares on turn 1 on that Dryad Arbor is it just keeps Chris. It's like a wasteland, right? It sets
Exactly.
him back, so you've essentially done nothing. Although Reid, it's not quite a wasteland because he gets to keep his land, so he uses a spell to wasteland the Dryad Arbor.
Exactly. So Wirewood Symbiote connects for 1 damage against Reid Duke there, and Verdant Catacomb is the follow-up play.
Every point of damage matters, so get it in while you can.
Chris trying to decide what he wants to do. He's got a pair of Glimpse of Natures in his hand, and I think he may have a Natural Order there as well, and a Gaia's Cradle, and a Mystery card. So we'll see where things go. Reid untaps, draws for the turn, hides his cards from the camera. I want to say I think I see another Swords to Plowshares there, but honestly, I'm... there's definitely I think there are 2 Swords to Plowshares there.
No, he just drew it, Joey. He didn't have it that turn.
I think he's got 2.
Stop messing with me.
We'll see.
Dang
Yeah,
it,
that's
I think you're
definitely
right.
a Swords to Plowshares there in the front.
That's the Ice Age version of Swords to Plowshares.
Yes. He's going to go ahead and cast a Stoneforge Mystic here. Now, the thing about Wirewood Symbiote, of course, you want to kill it because it protects the other elves. But by itself, it's pretty innocuous because there's nothing else to protect. So,
No, you still want to kill it.
well, of course he still wants to kill it. But I'm saying he's safe from it at the moment.
So the
Not doing
Stoneforge
anything.
Mystic gets Umezawa's Jite, and now he's green sunning for Dryad Arbor. And now we are developing the board for Reid Duke. This is usually what we see elves do, is develop the board in this fashion.
Yeah, Reid being able to keep Chris off of that initial Dryad Arbor has kind of slowed things down for Chris. Still, that deck is so explosive, I wouldn't put it past Chris to suddenly have a board full of threats a turn or two from now. Going to go ahead and immediately search for a Dryad Arbor off of a fetch land at the end of Reid's turn here.
Okay, this seems to be an indication that Chris Andersen is going to get a Gaia's Cradle, play a Gaia's Cradle next turn, and make some mana and really try to do something with it, which is another reason why Reid may have wanted to use Swords to Plowshares early on.
Yeah, I'm going to say that Natural Order may be incoming. There is a Natural Order there. He's got a couple of Glimpse of Natures. He's got a Green Sun Zenith, and he's got a Gaia's Cradle.
That's another good one, too. Natural Order, getting Progenitus, maybe still the thing to do. Kids these days.
Draws into a Nettle Sentinel.
Kids these days want their Craterhoof Behemoth, but
they certainly
good
do.
Good old Progenitus, protection from everything. I used to say protection from everything, including you, but now there's going to be True Name Nemesis, which literally is protection from you, and you just point to your opponent.
Yeah.
Green mana, so let's try to keep track of what's going on here. Green mana, Glimpse of Nature, so now this is the other element of the Elves deck, the combo element. Yep, there, Glimpse of Nature on your screen. Whenever you play a creature spell this turn, draw a card. So again, this triggers on playing, not resolving or entering the battlefield. I made the mistake earlier with Nettle Sentinel.
Yeah, another thing that makes this deck so explosive and so powerful is that the spells sometimes don't even need to resolve to have an effect.
So tap Dryad Arbor for 1, cast Nettle Sentinel, draw a card. He's still going to draw a card, but Reid Duke responding with Windswept Heath activation.
So Reid likely going to go ahead and get a white source to deal with that symbiote before the Nettle Sentinel hits the board.
And that will also deny Chris an extra green mana from the Gaia's Cradle. He can only tap it for 2.
He could just respond and tap it for 3 here. So Swords to Plowshares.
I'm assuming this is all still in response to the Nettle Sentinel on the stack.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry.
Chris has not even drawn a card yet for the Glimpse trigger.
Yes, you're right.
And he remembers to do so. Draws another Cradle. He's already played the Cradle this turn. Now Green Sun Zenith. X equals 1 with the 2 mana from the Cradle.
It'll get a Wirewood Symbiote. And Reid with a likely answer in hand. I'm pretty sure he's got a 3rd copy of Swords to Plowshares, but he is out of white sources.
But Chris Andersen is out of mana. Oh, but he makes some mana there.
Yeah, he's able to untap the Dryad Arbor using the Wirewood Symbiote ability to return the Nettle Sentinel and replay it, draw another card. And so Glimpse of Nature fizzles out a little bit. Fizzles out's the wrong way to put it, but isn't not too explosive. It drew him a few cards, and he passed the turn.
This deck, if it gets going, is able to continuously just stream out creatures. Sometimes you get 2 Glimpse of Natures going, and then just keep chaining them. Multiple Nettle Sentinels untapping each time, and then remaking mana with Heritage Druid. That was a small glimpse, but it's a very important glimpse.
And Reid does indeed have the 3rd copy of Swords to Plowshares. He gets rid of that Wirewood Symbiote and follows up with the Jite, which immediately equips to the Stoneforge Mystic, and Mystic is attacking.
But the Nettle Sentinel is a 2/2.
It is.
So that's not the worst thing here. If he blocks with it, Reid. Oh, but it's got Exalted. Wow. So 2-3 Stoneforge Mystic attacking. Yeah, there you see Reid do point to the Noble Hierarch. Take
And
2.
2 counters on the GT. Now that's not going to be enough to take out both the Dryad Arbor and the Nettle Sentinel, so he can take out either or. He's going to go ahead and take out the Arbor, which will take out effectively 2 mana because it takes out the land itself, and then the fact that it's a creature
for Cradle.
For Cradle, yeah. So.
But Chris Andersen has another glimpse of nature.
And another Gaia's Cradle.
And another Gaia's Cradle. So this is where the new legend rule has really helped the Elves deck. You can tap the first Cradle for mana, play the second Cradle, and then sacrifice. It's not sacrifice, but put the first Cradle in your graveyard, and then tap the second Cradle for mana. Where it used to be, they would both just go away. So a very important tweet here that I want to respond to. Daryl on Twitter at @Cloud_Walker says, this guy playing elves, why does he have random stuff scrawled in Sharpie on his cards? Pretty tilting. Well, this is Chris Andersen playing elves. This is the deck he is known best for on the Open Series. He's been with us for several years playing elves, has played a few other things recently, but has come back, come to his home. And this is Chris Andersen's last Magic tournament in some time. He's going to go back to school. He's going to try to study and become an astrophysicist and get a PhD. So all of the scrawling on those cards is all of his friends at the Open Series that he's made over the last few years have signed a card each. And Chris is going to keep this deck with him as a memento of his time with us playing Magic on the Open Series. He asked me earlier, he said, hey, make sure, don't forget to sign one of my cards. So I will be doing so as well. I'm going to miss Chris, and he is clearly going to miss all of us, so he wants to take a little piece of the Open Series with him. Meanwhile...
Yeah, in the meantime, Chris has decided to cast that Natural Order. What he did was he played a Findhorn Elves, then tapped the Cradle for 2, then was able to replay or play his second Cradle, destroying the first, tap the second Cradle for 2. That's 4 mana. He had Natural Order. He sacrificed the Findhorn Elves that he had cast earlier in the turn and searches up a Viridian Shaman, which destroys target artifact when it enters the battlefield. So he's able to destroy the Jite. The Jite, of course, with only 1 counter left on it, not able to take out the Nettle Sentinel or the Viridian Shaman. So Reid uses it to, I believe, pump his life total just a bit. And yeah, a nice little turn of events, nice little play from Chris Andersen. And Reid's going to go ahead and play 2 spells this turn after attacking with the Stoneforge Mystic. He gets a Knight of the Reliquary and a Sylvan Library, and that is going to help Reid really set things up on his draw step to draw the best card from the top of his library. Chris with no play.
What a crazy game situation. Natural Order, one of the most powerful cards just on its own in Legacy. You can just search up a Progenitus, a Regal Force, a Craterhoof Behemoth, kind of legendary and some non-legendary giant green creatures of yore. And in that game state, all it got was a Viridian Shaman.
And that's what he needed. He needed to deal with that Umasawa's Jite, who was going to take over the game against the Elves deck. And so Chris, obviously knowing this very well, I'm sure he's lost to a Jite a number of times. He's got the tools to fight it, and he's going to use them, even if it's using a 4-mana spell and another creature to get a 3-mana creature.
It's not about the fancy play, it's about the correct play, and pretty sure that was the correct play to take out the Umazawa's Jite.
Stoneforge Mystic crashes in for another 2. Remember, it does have Exalted off of that Noble Hierarch. So Stoneforge Mystic has been going on offense quite a bit this game. Scavenging Ooze from Reid, and that can that has the potential to grow quite large here with all these creatures in the graveyard. Reid notably exiled a few of them with Swords to Plowshares, so there aren't quite as many available as there could otherwise be, but still a solid creature.
I think it's possible in this matchup that Chris Andersen actually boarded out something like Progenitus, or did not bring in. I don't even know.
Yeah, Progenitus is in the board,
in the sideboard.
Yeah.
So, especially after seeing the humility, maybe decides Progenitus is not the right thing.
Chris decides he's going to cast Glimpse of Nature here, And with that on the stack, Reid cracks a windswept heath, tutoring up a tropical island. He's going to go ahead and use Knight of the Reliquary. He's going to tap a Tundra for mana and then activate the Knight of the Reliquary, sacrificing the Tundra to tutor up another land. He's going to get a Wasteland.
Gonna go for that Cradle before it gets out of hand, so Chris can only tap it here for 2 mana. Oh, still something else.
And he's going to hard cast a Force of Will on the Glimpse of Nature. Not at all what anyone expected. Even Chris Andersen starts picking up the Cradle, thinking that's going away. And no, he says, you know,
wow.
I'll stop your Glimpse of Nature by just straight countering it with a 5-mana counterspell. And Deathrite Shaman is the follow-up play from Chris, and Chris passes back. And now Reid can certainly deal with that Cradle, and Chris has a lot of sorcery speed threats and very few instant speed threats, so even being able to get 3 mana out of that Cradle here, it's not likely going to help much.
Well, alrighty then, Reid Duke. That must have been his plan all along. He had the Force of Will in his hand, no blue card. He wanted to be able to hardcast that by using the Knight of the Reliquary to kind of generate extra mana, because you recall he did not attack with the Knight. He attacked with the Stoneforge Mystic, the Knight much bigger with all those lands in his graveyard, but he chose to keep the Knight back to have the ability to cast Force of Will.
So, Wasteland does indeed take out that Gaia's Cradle, as we mentioned. So that's 2 Gaia's Cradles in Chris's graveyard. How many does he play main deck?
He's playing
4. So he's got 2 more in there.
If you're not playing 4, you're wrong, is what some people might say, because with the new legendary rule, it's just
absolutely
so powerful, and you want at least 1, and oftentimes 2 is great as well. There are some awkward hands, you know, multiple Cradle hands where you can't cast something initially, you got a mulligan, but that's the price you pay for the incredible power level that you get out of it.
Alright, so Reid Duke is going to go into the red zone with a Knight of the Reliquary and a Scavenging Ooze.
That is big. Okay, so the Scavenging Ooze is just a 2/2, and the Knight of the Reliquary is a 6/6. 4 lands in Reid's graveyard.
So a 6/6, and then that Scavenging Ooze has the potential to grow much larger than the 2/2 it is currently.
Yeah.
Of course, Reid used his Wasteland and then replaced it with a new Wasteland this turn. He's going to go ahead and use that on the Bayou.
7/7 Knight, and the Ooze can grow by 4, eating 4 creatures. So potentially a 6/6 Ooze. That would be 13 damage. Not enough, so Chris just takes it.
Gaddock Teague comes down post-combat. Chris not going to be able to cast a Natural Order or a Green Sun Zenith. Off the top is a Heritage Druid, so he's got, I believe, a Regal Force in hand. Is that what it looked like to you? I think Chris has Regal Force and Heritage Druid. Regal Force certainly long away from being able to be cast. I'm not sure if that's what's in his hand.
I don't think it matters what's in his hand here. The writing really seems to be on the wall. All those Wastelands, taking out Cradles, timely Swords to Plowshares. A short while, Reid Duke had a Umezawa's Jite going and took some creatures out with that. Chris Andersen can make some amount of mana with that Heritage Druid, but nothing happening, no other plays. Reid begins eating, he begins scavenging with the Ooze.
That's right.
Untaps, and I think this is it. Earlier today, we witnessed Jerry Thompson's final sanctioned match of Magic. Before he becomes a Wizards of the Coast R&D intern, we may be witnessing Chris Andersen's last match of Magic in a good while. Maybe his last match on the Open Series in a while. Maybe he'll find a Friday Night Magic wherever he is studying and play there. But it has been a great run watching Chris Andersen really grow up on the Open Series.
Love watching him play Elves. I have for quite a while, and I loved the Tezzeret deck that he played this summer. Ended up winning an Open with it. Reid, meanwhile, going to go ahead and cast a Brainstorm. Interesting because he already is aware of what those cards are off of the Sylvan library, so apparently he wanted several of them in hand and did not want to pay the life cost of the library effect, which is fair.
He's only at 7.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And you have Brainstorm, why not use it? So, resolving Brainstorm here, Reid's going to put a couple back.
Gonna think about it a little bit longer. I mean, I'm talking like the game is over, but it is not over. Not by a long shot, and Reid wants to make sure not to make any mistakes here in the critical moments. Very easy to overlook something, and Chris Andersen does have potentially explosive effects in his deck. If he finds another Gaia's Cradle that represents a lot of mana, Reid could be afraid of something like an Azuri Renegade Leader pumping all of the elves. Here we go.
Yeah, it is very easy to overlook something, especially against that Elves deck. And, we've seen Elves players overlook something in their own deck because there are just so many interactions. So the Knight of the Reliquary still a 7/7 here, attacking alongside a 4/4 Scavenging Ooze.
Both are effectively lethal. So Chris is going to have to commit blockers this time. He has to figure out which creatures he wants to block with. Viridian Shaman, definitely. No, not.
Huh.
Are we out of creatures? That may be the case.
Yeah, we're out of creatures.
Sorry, you mentioned the Swords to Plowshares. That's actually coming into play here. There are no more creatures in the graveyard, so when the Viridian Shaman died, it's the only creature in the graveyard now. So I apologize. Only taking 4 from the Scavenging Ooze. Wow, okay.
Could be relevant. Chris left at 2 life. Can he get back into this game? Can he stabilize? Can he steal this from Reid Duke right out from under Reid's nose? I'm not sure, but
I feel like he
we're going
needs
to
a
find
cradle.
out. Yeah, and
makes 3 green with the Heritage Druid activated ability. Plays a Quirion Ranger.
Gets to untap that Nettle Sentinel.
Taps for green, so now he has 3 green floating. Untaps Deathrite Shaman. And this is where an experienced elf player like Chris Andersen, so good at puzzling out all of these abilities. So what he did was he used the Quirion Ranger, return the force to his hand, untap Deathrite Shaman, now tapping 3 elves for the Heritage Druid ability again. So 6 green mana in his pool, 7 green mana, Regal Force.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he found a way to cast that Regal Force that's been sitting in his hand, and now he's going to get to draw 5 cards.
There you go. Magic the puzzling there by Chris Andersen. Here's your board state. Generate enough mana to cast Regal Force.
And Chris finds a way to do it. So is it enough? Is it enough at 2 life here? And he's got a couple of blockers.
It doesn't look like enough because Reid Duke has added a second Knight of the Reliquary to the board.
Not only that, but Gaddock Teeg can attack, Stoneforge Mystic can attack.
Yeah,
he only needs to get in with 2 1-power guys. There's a Dryad Arbor can also attack.
Everything but the 0/1.
But the Noble Hierarch.
Untap a creature with Quirion Ranger. Block 3
and
creatures. Handshake.
Yeah. Reid Duke takes the game and match 2 games to 1 with Bant over Chris Andersen and his Elves list. Congratulations, Chris Andersen, on the top 8, and we wish you well in your future endeavors. Reid Duke, we wish you well in the semifinals.
Good luck, Rocket Man. Fly me to space someday, or do whatever you do with astrophysics. Build me a time machine, actually. We talked about time machines this weekend from time to time. That's what astrophysics is about, right?
I'm not sure.
Warp